sure I'm good here. Her. I think sometimes when I talk, my St. Louis accent comes out when I get relaxed. And I say her, there. And people look at me like I'm crazy. Okay. Hello, everybody. This is Angelo Webb here with the Multifamily Man podcast powered by Total Wealth Academy. In our new and improved room, we got some cool Legos and stuff all around. Lucas, as we post the videos, I'm sure we'll have some pictures up so you guys know what the hell I'm talking about because you can't see it. I just realized that if you're watching, you cannot see it. Um, However, thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to talk about another aspect of value add, which is really our main strategy um, that we teach, that we use, because we believe it's the best strategy in real estate to grow your capital. It's the best way to get your returns. And when you find these deals, the most important thing is to stop and understand, even if it is a value add deal, the feasibility of it. And that could change everything, right? You look at something like, well, yeah, this is definitely a property that we can add value to. It is in that position where we can do the value add, right? Um, from there, there's still some calculations and understandings that you have to see if it's feasible financially, right? So, just like a single family home, I mean, you can go in and put $100,000 into it, but if the comps, only call for a certain price, it is what it is, right? So, if on the high end in a neighborhood, a comp says that a single family home is $250,000. If you buy it for $200,000 and put $150 in it, you can't sell it for $350. You could try, but you would lose a lot of money, right? You probably lose your shirt, and simply because the market dictates what that type price is. Now you can press it. You definitely can raise it. You know what I mean? You can definitely be that guy or girl that goes in and says, the market says 250. We're adding this feature. We know the market is going up because it's a seller's market, etc. We're gonna go in and we're gonna say this is worth 275, right? But that's a reasonable, expectation, right? To what 250 and you put it 275, you're just saying it's worth 10% more than what the market's calling for. Because of certain market factors, right? When you're looking at multifamily, you can't go into a multifamily building or a property and say, all right, everybody in this sub-market, the market has determined that a two-bedroom is $1,000. But we're going to put granite and we're going to put smart refrigerators, right? And you put in all this stuff and you say, now we're gonna charge $1,800 for a two-bedroom. It's not gonna happen, right? Because the market is gonna dictate kind of what that cap is. Okay, so we always have to be aware of what we're really able to do and what's feasible, right? So even if we do have some, right? Let's say we find one in that neighborhood, average rent for the two-bedroom, the market has determined that is $1,000, right? We look at all the comps. That's what they're doing, right? $1,000 is the top end, and we find that one, right, the ugliest one in that good neighborhood or best neighborhood, and they're only charging, let's say, $600 for their two bedrooms, right? But there's obviously some deferred maintenance. There's some things going on the property that need improvement, right? And that's what we're looking for, all right? And we say to ourselves that is reasonable, right? This is what we want to identify. Now, the feasibility part of this is how much is it going to take money wise, right? How much capital is it going to take to put these units and this property in the position where we can ask for $1,000 per unit, right? Or per two bedroom, because that's the example we're using today. This could make or break the deal. Because if it costs a certain amount of money to make these improvements, it may not be financially feasible, right? So if the property is worth $1 million, and this is just using simple math here, if it's worth $1 million and it's going to take you 500,000 to make those improvements to the property, you have to look at what is my return now, right? Is doing this going to cause my returns to be so low that myself or my investors are better off putting our money in a fucking CD at a bank? Like, so you have to understand and look at those things, right? And one person who I listen to and I've been following for years is Rod Khalif. Excellent man, great podcast, great educator. Definitely one of those people that I listen religiously, read all his books. He has kind of a formula that he uses that's kind of common in the industry, um, and it's about those improvements that you're making to the unit and your return. See, that's important, right? So, his theory that he uses and kind of an industry standard for people at his level, that does what he does, and that do it well, is it should take 3 years, right? You should be able to recoup that investment in 3 years. So that means that you should be getting, like a 33 or 35% return yearly on the cost to renovate a unit, right? So let's just say you have 10 units. Let's just say it's a small property, right? And it's 20 units, 24 units. And to get to market, that it's going to take $8,000 per unit, right? You're going to have to put $8,000 into each unit, right? So let's just look at that singly though, right? So we take a unit, we have to put 8,000 to get it to market, so we can go from where we are to where we need to be, right? Or where we want to be. If we spend $8,000, we have to be able to get our money back in 3 years. Quick math in my head, about you have to be able to raise rents $220 to $225 a month to meet that standard, right? To make that 8,000 back, and get that 35% return, it'd have to be $220 to $225 a month, right? But just because that math makes sense does not mean it's feasible. Because once you put that math in, if that's going to put you significantly over the market, then it's not a deal, right? Because what you're going to do is fix up these units. Everybody's going to love it, but nobody's going to be able to afford it, right? So you have to make sure that when you're making these, when we're doing our calculations, and we're underwriting, we're doing so, we have to make sure that the improvements that we're making are financially feasible and that the market can take them. Okay, so that's one big thing that, again, I've seen people lose money doing because they did improve, right? Or they improved to the standard of the neighborhood. But the problem was there's not enough meat on the bones, right? It just wasn't feasible for them to get that return. So if it takes you 8,000 to fix up a unit, but it's going to take you 8 years to get that return on investment, that doesn't make sense, right? So we just have to make sure that it's financially feasible. And there's several ways really to do that. But the main one is saying, hey, I know it's going to cost $8,000 a unit. Can I raise rents, right? Or over a 3-year period or 4-year period, can I raise my rents $225, right? Once this is done, really after you renovate a unit, there's no waiting, right? Once I go from a classic to a updated, the rents are going up, right? So can it withstand the 225, the 220? And that's a question that you really have to not give yourself the answer that you want. You have to give yourself the answer that the market provides. um, because we will convince ourselves that people will buy this. We will convince ourselves that, um, and that's just that part of our brain that wants us to succeed, right? It's the part of our brain that wants everything to work out. It's the part of our brain that thinks everything will always be okay. So you have to really not lean on your understanding and let the market tell you, right? Let the market tell you if that's going to work. Um, Another thing that, as far as underwriting, I think is okay to talk about right now. Um, but that's part of your underwriting process, right? Another thing that I've seen is just gonna pop in my head, and I'll go ahead and talk about is when you're underwriting your taxes. Understand the taxes, okay? Because again, I've seen people go into a property thinking that they're gonna cash flow, and to their surprise, they're not cash flowing, and they're trying to understand why. Right? They want to know, why aren't we cash flowing? We underwrote, this is what's the underwriting. We did this, we did that. What's going on? The taxes. Understand the taxes. All right. So if you buy a property that has been assessed for $1 million, you know, last year, but you come and buy this property, and understand what it's assessed versus what it's actually worth are not the same. Rarely are they the same. Um, even in single family, it's not always the same. So um, if it's been assessed as $1 million, and that's what they've been paying the taxes on, right? So it's been around there. If you come in and you determine, and the market determines this property is worth $4 million, guess what? When you go to get assessed the next year, it's not going to be assessed at $1 million anymore, right? It's going to be assessed at $4 million or close to it, or about 85% of $4 million. So what does that do to your taxes? Obviously, it's going to quadruple them, right? It's just simple math. It's going to freaking triple or quadruple them, somewhere in between. And that could be the difference between major cash flow and no cash flow. That could be the difference between cash flow and you bleeding money, right? Or the difference between cash flow and you going to your investors and let them know, like, damn, I really screwed up, right? So make sure when you're underwriting to pay attention to the taxes and understand that when you do purchase this property, um, the new assessed value of it is what you purchased it for. So that will lead to an increase in your taxes. So that's just another thing that to look for when you're underwriting. You're looking at not just value add. If you're looking at a property in general, even if you're a person who, again, mainly what I'm going to talk about is value add, just because that's what we do and that's what I do and that's what we teach. However, even if you're a yield, a person that, you're looking at the yield play. Another term for yield play that you probably are very familiar with is turnkey, right? You buy the property, it's making money. You ain't got to do shit but collect your checks, right? So turnkey and yield are really the same thing. When you hear me say that or hear anybody say that here, or in general, it's the same meaning. So even if you are, it's a yield play or turnkey, understand that once you purchase it, that the new assessed value will affect your cash flow. So that's just one of those things to always keep an eye out for. Yeah, Lucas definitely cut the last 30 seconds. Yeah, but that's definitely something that you always want to keep an eye out for. Just another little tip, another little trick to help you make the best decision when identifying properties and what you want to buy. But hey, again, this is God damn it. So yeah, that's just another little kind of tip or trick that you want to look at to make sure that you're giving yourself a realistic vision of what the financials are going to be like. And you definitely don't want to get to the point where you think you just made $100,000 and you look up and there's a $60,000 tax bill, right? So that's one of the best ways to kind of avoid that and look out for those things. But yeah, and as I go and as I talk, some things might pop in my head that may not be on the subject, and instead of just doing another show about it, I'll just go ahead and talk about it because it is kind of relatable because it all comes down to underwriting. But hey, I thank you guys for listening today. Again, my name is Angelo Webb, and thank you for listening to the Multifamily Man podcast. Have a good one.